Welcome to the Faith Homestead Podcast. And for those of you joining us on YouTube, thank you for being here with us. Today, we're going to be talking about relying more on yourself and less on others in ways that you may not think about. Are you paying someone to fix your clogged drains or repair your car? Are you paying to have someone cut your children's hair? If you're answering yes to these things, it may make sense, but you are totally capable of doing some of those things on your own. Again, we want to thank you for joining us today. And if you could just take a minute to like and subscribe here on YouTube. And if you're listening to us via podcast, please subscribe. So let's get right into it. Matt, would you be able to tell us your thoughts on relying more on yourself and less on others? And how do you view this in today's society?
Well, this is something that we talked about last week in trying to, being outside of our comfort zones and becoming less reliant on other people. And I think that reliance can be, there are certain instances where reliance is something that really is necessary for us to, we will need someone. In a medical emergency, we are relying upon a medical professional to provide care. And I think that there are definitely instances where the reliance on somebody that is a professional is something that's important. But I think we also need to start to rely on ourselves for more things in our normal everyday lives. So when we look at the abilities and the skills that God has given us and the abilities that we have to not only figure out problems, but also to educate ourselves to be able to figure out more problems. Seeking help from people that may have experience in something that you may not feel comfortable with doing, but you find somebody that that is. For so many instances, and one that comes to mind right away that you brought up was working on our cars, just doing a simple oil change, is something that, will it save you tons of money? Probably not, unless you do every single oil change for your car from day one till the final day that you own it. But the truth of it is that understanding that, simply getting underneath of your car to change your oil, and you'll start to pay attention to things on your vehicle that most people are going to overlook. Simply looking at, what do the brakes look like? Or do we have good brake pads? Do we see scoring on our rotors? That might be an indication of something's going wrong. Is there rust developing underneath my vehicle, right? Looking at it and saying, I'm underneath my car every 3,000 miles. I'm taking a look and seeing what's happening.
Yeah, and I know we talked about this a little bit on the last video that we did, but can you just explain to our viewers, how would they go about, say they heard their brakes squealing, and they know that they are going to need brakes soon. What do if they're so used to just taking their car to a mechanic? What can they do? How do they even go about that?
Well, yeah, I think that if you have been in that pattern of taking your car to your mechanic, and if you've been driving for any amount of time now, that you hear your brakes squealing, then there's typically time for your new brakes, right? Because you're told that, right? When you take your car to your mechanic, they go, well, you need your new brakes done now, and here they go. So understanding, from previous experience, but at the same time, calling friends that that can do this kind of stuff. Talking to mechanics that may be willing to say, hey, listen, here's some ways that things that you can check on that are worthwhile for you to maybe even start to do on your own. YouTube is the perfect place for anything that you don't know. You can find the answers there, no problem.
Yeah. So one example for me personally, I'm not fixing cars. That's not really my forte, but very thankful that Matt can do that for us. But one thing that I, started early on, and this ties into the frugality of our YouTube channel, is cutting hair. And I'm not a professional hair cutter. I didn't go to school for that, but I knew that there was a need to save that money in our house. And so I would say probably over a decade ago, I started cutting your hair before we had children. And at first, it wasn't the best. And I'm still not amazing at it, but it's acceptable. And now that we have kids, I have two boys. I haven't cut my youngest son's hair yet. I'm really struggling with cutting his curly locks off, but our oldest son Thomas, I just cut his hair, and I've been cutting his hair since he was born. And I asked him, I actually did it last night, and I asked him, I was like, are you happy that mommy's cutting your hair, or would you rather go to a barber? And he's like, no. He's like, I get to sit here on the table, and I get to just talk to you, and I really do like that, and I really made me feel good because he's really not missing out on too much of an experience. I think
Mhm.
when we first cut his hair, we took him to a barber for a little
He
while.
went to my barber with me for a little while,
Yeah.
which was just kind of just out of laziness that we
It
started
was. It
going
was. I think
to
we
a
started in the
barber.
winter. It was in the winter.
I can remember we took him to one of those children's haircut places, which was a
He
nightmare.
screamed. It was so sad. It was actually, I feel like it was like traumatizing for him to go through that.
Maybe more for you than it was for
Yeah,
him, but
maybe.
yeah, and I think that that's something that you kind of stepped up and kind of took on without necessarily having much knowledge in how do I do this. And
Yeah.
when you decided to do that, what did you do anything to make yourself more comfortable with taking that on?
Yeah, so the first thing I did was I started with buying a hair clipper kit on Amazon. I think I spent $20 and practiced on you first. And at first, Matt was just shaving his hair. So I mean, it was very simple for me to take a number two and just completely cut his hair off. And that actually, believe it or not, gave me the confidence to maybe try something different the following time. And then I started using scissors, and now I have no problem cutting, yours and Thomas's hair. But I am nervous. We have a daughter. She's going to be 3 in December, Jocelyn, and she's a girl, and she has longer hair, and I have no idea how to cut long hair. And you would think that it would be simple. You just kind of look and see where it's even and you go across, but I don't think it's that simple. So I have a friend, and she's going to actually show me how to do that. And she's willing to do that. So that's what Matt was talking about, like seeking out help. So she's probably gonna show me once, and I'm probably gonna record her, and then I'm
Mhm.
going to just learn how to do it, and I will then trim my daughter's hair, probably until she goes to college. So she wants to pay for it herself.
Absolutely. And that's stuff that, you know, while there's definitely people that are professionals in those industries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are tasks that we can take on a daily basis that may end up, saving us a little bit of money long term. Again, looking at the idea of not only just doing more work yourself, but also taking that money that we'd be spending on, you know,
It adds up.
30 or $40 a haircut per
Yeah.
person, three people, three men in the house doing those haircuts is
Mm-hmm.
90 to $100 a month in haircuts at some
Yeah.
point. Like,
And even if we stretch it to every other month or every 3 months, it still adds up. It's quite a bit of money.
yeah.
It's hundreds of dollars a year.
And that's money that we can invest and we want to invest in
Mm-hmm.
other areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Simple things like fixing the lawnmower this summer. That
Yes.
was a project that I wasn't quite prepared to really dive into.
That worried me a little
Um,
bit.
Bent rods and tearing apart an engine. But, again, that was friends helped me, kind of understand what to look for, where to start
Mm-hmm.
when it was, hey, this lawnmower is not going to run. But then it was into YouTube looking at, and I found a video of a guy who completely took apart the exact same lawnmower that we have, right?
Who
And
would have thunk it?
which our lawnmower is not newer. It's,
It's
a
very old.
20-year-old lawnmower at this point. So finding that video, even though they weren't necessarily fixing the exact problem that I had, it showed me some things in taking it apart that saved me a lot of time.
Yeah.
Knowing to disassemble in a certain order, even though it's not necessarily like it has to be that order, disassembling in that certain order definitely made taking apart that engine a lot easier.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like you've gotten pretty good at small engines over the last couple of years.
if you take enough of them apart, you
I,
get
I
pretty
mean,
good
he's
at them.
fixed. I mean, I feel like you could probably have a side business fixing small engines at this point. It's really unbelievable. And this is a prime example of you're able to do things. Like you are so much more capable than you think. Okay. And you might be sitting here thinking like, oh, I could never do that, but you can, because Matt never used to be able to do those things. I never used to be able to do those things, but guess what? 10 years later, we're doing a lot of things that we never thought we would be able to do. And, I feel like, just with small engines and, I remember we have constant plumbing issues. I don't know if at your house, if you have to only use a certain type of toilet paper. But during the pandemic, there was a toilet paper shortage of Scott, and I'm gonna say the name. It was Scott toilet paper, and we for some reason have a issue with flushing anything down our toilet that is not Scott. And so during 2020, Matt had some fun times out there with a snake. And instead of calling a plumber, we could, I mean, that's just a crazy amount of money. Plumbers are very awesome and they deserve every penny they make, but we just weren't in a position to do that because we were trying to pay off a lot of our debt. And so he was out there with the snake, and I don't think that was one of your favorite moments.
This was something that, again, a clogged pipe. I would rather run to Home Depot, rent the snake for that drain, and it was
like $100,
$75 somewhere around
yeah.
there, and try to snake it out myself before I call somebody. I have no problem admitting when I'm in a job that's well above my head and I have no business
100%.
being in. But at the same time, if I don't try to find that answer, I also don't feel like I really gave it my all in trying to really correct that problem either, which again, I think is something that's important for us as a society to push ourselves beyond what are we really comfortable with.
Exactly.
You know, the furnace had its condensate line drain back up. Okay. And that was another one where, you know, it could have been, you know, a few $100s, and we could have had an HVAC guy come out and have that up and running in a day or two. But I wanted to see if that was an issue that I could fix on my own.
Yeah.
It turned into a little bit more of a project, had to cut PVC and do all these things that I wasn't quite prepared for. But
you did it.
We got through it. We got the drain completely cleared out, and also replumbed it in a way that I can now take it apart again without having to cut all the PVC out. So it's not necessarily, you know, somebody that doesn't, a novice just taking on jobs that they really shouldn't.
Yeah, you need to be careful that you don't hurt yourself or, you know, the thing that you're trying to fix even worse.
You know, working with electricity, something I don't play around with.
There are definitely places, and you know, for trying to do something yourself and DIY it, but there are times when you really shouldn't. It's a safety issue.
Absolutely.
So I think, you know, something for me, you know, I talked about cutting hair a little bit, but I also think that, you know, everybody should learn how to cook, whether you're a woman or a man. I think that we rely way too heavily on, you know, conveniences and, you know, just kind of quick meals in today's world. And I think learning how to cook, and you don't have to become a home chef. That's not what I'm saying, but I really think it's important that you know how to cook so that you can, you know, save money in those regards. I think that it's really actually crazy how many people don't even know how to, you know, cook noodles or, you know, make a casserole. And these things are so readily available. You can type in whatever you're interested in eating, and you could have, you know, 10 different recipes. And even if you are like, well, I don't have all those ingredients, or that seems a little bit too difficult for me, you can type in like the easy way to do something, and you'll get all these like quick recipes that cut down the time, you know, that are crock pot friendly. I just think that we need to start trying a little bit harder. And things like cleaning your own house. How many of you listening today have somebody come weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly to clean your house? I know it saves you time, and it probably feels absolutely wonderful to leave work and come home to a clean house on a Thursday, for example. But I really think that if we start to try to trim the fat with the amount of money that we're spending, we are really able to, you know, put a lot more money towards things that are really important, like our future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So some other things, you know, that are, you know, these are more, I feel like these are kind of more advanced, but, you know, but it's baby steps. Like you might not really be super into cleaning your house, but you are willing to start gardening. So in those situations, you could maybe, you know, keep having your person clean your house for a while, but you could maybe start seeds. Figure out what zone you're in. You know, we're in zone 7A in Pennsylvania, and I know that every March I need to start my seeds for the year. And I mean, we really go crazy with peppers. I mean, one year we had so many peppers, we didn't even know what to do with them. I mean, we had salsa, canned salsa, you know, for years. We are still working on salsa from 2020. That is, we actually just talked about that today. It's crazy. We have jalapenos and and all kinds of stuff from 2020. So we really need to start finishing that off. But you can buy seeds and start seeds indoors with such minimal effort. I think our greenhouse that I have in our house, I have a little greenhouse that I put in my one room on the far side of the house that's against like a sliding glass door window. So it doesn't get a lot of sun by any means, but it gets just enough. And I have a couple of those, what are those lights called that
The grow lamps.
yeah, so I have a couple grow bulbs that just go in like the like just a regular like mechanical light, and I click those all over the place, and I just grow seeds. And by Father's Day, I have amazing plants that are ready for the garden, and I spent just dollars for seeds and for fertilizer. So it's really great. So basically,
and it's something that keeps you involved in the process of growing through more of the year as well, right? So it keeps it on our minds a little bit more. I think it makes it harder as our season starts to wrap up in the garden, because we've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
We reached that point where it's like we're tired of the garden.
Yeah, but we are happy when we get the fruits of our labor.
Yeah, absolutely. And it being, the middle of November, come towards the end of November now, we still need to go down and cut down the plants from last year.
Don't tell them.
So
no, we do need to do that.
That's something that I think, but it keeps us engaged more, and our soil does really well for growing the peppers and the tomato varieties. Certain tomatoes grow better in our garden than others.
Oh yeah, it's really interesting. And we're going to get into all of that. We actually have recently started the back to Eden gardening, which is the no-till gardening, which is what use like mulch or hay or straw or all different types of material that will break down. And we're going to get into all that during the growing season. Lastly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about home heating costs, because we are in a situation in America right now. If you have oil heat, you are at the forefront of understanding how hard this is going to be this year. So we have a wood stove. Do you want to talk a little bit about why we chose a wood stove versus everything else?
Absolutely. So we had a propane forced air system furnace in our house. So 500-gallon tank in the backyard. Filling that in the wintertime, especially, the Januaries, Februaries, tank of propane, 500, gallon tank, which is really only 400 gallons that they put in. But an entire fill on that would be gone within 28 days. And in the middle of wintertime, you could be upwards of $3 plus in propane cost. Which one nice thing owning our tank, we are able to kind of shop around to get that best price. But typically summertime, those prices are a lot lower, right? And we're shooting to fill our tank before the cold weather gets here, which it doesn't always work because we put the wood stove in. And that's really our main source of heating right now, especially that Sarah's home with the kids now full time. When Sarah and I both were working, we would burn the wood, but we burn nowhere near the amount that we burn now.
And we were using a lot more propane, because we have our thermostat, I think, set to like 60. And so when our house gets down to 60, that's when our heat will kick on.
Right.
And usually that's only for a very short period of time, especially if you're going to the gym in the morning at 4:30. The heat might kick on just for like 2-3 hours. Yeah. And so it saved us a lot of money. But we chose a wood stove, and I'm going to just tell you, part of frugality is sometimes stepping out of your comfort zone. And I think you know what we're going to talk about now. So we decided on a wood stove, because even we thought that, okay, I think getting cords of wood and having those delivered pre-cut cords of wood was still cheaper than the pellets, having those delivered at the time when we were looking at pellet prices to heat our house for the 4 months that we need to heat it. But I was really hoping that we might get a way to get some discounted firewood. So one day we were driving around here where we live, and we saw a young man at a church cutting a tree down. And I was like, Matt, he looks really friendly and approachable.
A tree down. He had 20 trees cut down.
So we had a lot of trees cut down. And I just was like, oh, he looks really approachable. You should go talk to him. And Matt was like, no,
I'm not getting out and talking to this random guy.
And I was like, yes, you are. So I was driving. So I feel like I had the upper hand here. And I drove right up to him, and I was like, shoving Matt out of the car. And he ended up talking to this guy, and we're actually we're friends with him now. And we are very, very thankful and very blessed that we get all of our wood for free.
And so this is a
There's ways to do it.
local tree company that really we were probably only a mile from our house when I first, introduced myself, and
Yeah.
I, started the conversation with, hey, do you sell firewood? Thinking that maybe there's a local guy, we could save a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Maybe I could pick it up instead of having deliver it. Just different ways that we're looking at trying to save money on the firewood. And he was just like, I have so much of this, like I just want to get rid of it. And I was like, well, I live a mile down the street. Just drop it in my front yard. And he looked at me like I was nuts. And, he's been dropping off wood with us ever
It's
since.
been like 4 years.
And being a single man operation on this one, it takes me a long time to get this stuff cut up. And thankfully our borough doesn't give us too much of a hard time about having some firewood laying in the front lawn for a month or two at a time. But, that was another learning experience in self-reliance. There are saws that are really made for getting that job done, and there are saws that aren't, and I burned a couple of saws up thinking I didn't need to buy an expensive or big saw, and it really makes a lot of difference when we do that job. And same thing with the log splitting, that's I recruit friends for that weekend, because trying to split up a year's worth in one weekend is it's a lot of work.
And one day we may be able to get us all, but something that I feel is kind of the take home point to that is there are ways to acquire things if you need to acquire things. So we didn't know that gentleman that we were going to approach for that wood. But there are places like back to Eden gardening. There are places that will bring mulch to you. There are actually websites online that you can put your address in, and you can actually get mulch if they are participating in your areas. I'll actually link that in the comments. But I just want you to know that if you need something, try to search for it. Try to go on the Facebook Marketplace and see if you can find this for free. See if you can borrow it, or see if you can barter. Those things are, just something to think about. So I really appreciate you guys being here today. And we hope that we answered some of your questions on, how to kind of move towards a more frugal lifestyle and ways to do that. And like we talked about is, just learning how to step out of your comfort zone and just do things on your own,
Absolutely.
So I'm Sarah, and this is Matt, and we're with Faith Homestead, and we will talk to you next week. Bye.
Have a good one.